Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is Lydia-Dean, and she's here to share with us her new book, Jumping the Picket Fence. Now, Lydia's memoir takes us through shelters for children across India, into the jungles of Costa Rica, Southeast Asia, and Venezuela, and to China, where Lydia and her husband adopt their third child. Believing that our collective small personal actions can make a difference towards a greater whole, she has devoted her life to a nonprofit that strengthens the voice of community-based organizations around the world, providing access to education, healthcare, and human rights. So let's welcome to the show, Lydia-Dean.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your memoir. Oh my goodness. There's so many parts of it where it's just like, it's heart-wrenching. I can really relate to a lot of it. I think you're getting that from a lot of people, right?
I've actually been really surprised at how relatable it's been, across various demographics, men, women, ages. It's kind of all over the map. And I'm thinking now that it might be that we all feel a lot more vulnerable than we might share on a daily basis. So from what I've gathered so far, it's being vulnerable and sharing our vulnerability that is, folks can relate to.
Well, you are definitely very courageous. I think you're doing what, have done and continue to do what a lot of people maybe, kind of secretly wish. It's like, gosh, I wish I could do more because I feel like I'm destined for something greater than what I'm doing.
Mm. Yeah, I think we all kind of feel that, that kind of wonder about, I wonder if I should be doing more. I wonder if I can do more. I wonder if I have the strength to do more that I'm doing now, which was, how I felt back when I was writing the book.
Well, why don't you share a little bit of what that period of time was like before you got to this place where you're like, hey, you know what? I need to make a change.
Well, I was on a path that we're sort of, I feel looking back that I was expected to be on, and not just myself, but, our generation. So this was back, 20 some years ago. I got out of high school, went to college, was dating my high school sweetheart, then got out of college and got a great job and kind of started working my way towards what I felt was what we were supposed to work towards, which was security and a house and starting a family and all the things that, you just assume that that's the package that you want. And I was putting just one foot in front of the other, and things were going so well. I'd had 2 kids and was self-employed. And from the outside looking in, I think it should have been perfection, but it wasn't. I just felt all wrong to me inside. So that was the weird position that I was in, was that I felt that I should have been happy because I was achieving what I thought my goals were.
Gosh, how many of us get into this position where they think, I'm just going to be happy when I become the top manager at this company, or when I get married, or when I get that house, all these different things. And then you achieve all that. And you look around, you're like, gosh, I have all this stuff. I'm still not happy. I mean, that happens.
Well, and also, we have to consider the voices in our heads that we're ignoring along the way. So, I think it's kind of standard now. We're hearing a lot, through this big wave of attention on meditation and sort of the monkey brain that we hear. That's sort of that voice that is, chattering away that we need to shut up. But, back in this moment, that wasn't sort of common knowledge. So I really battled with the chatter in my head that wasn't sort of my inner calling. And then this other voice that really didn't become strong until much later in my life that was telling me, this isn't really your goal. This isn't really what you want deep inside. There's another path for you, and it might not be traditional, but you need to follow it and you need to trust it. And that just took, such a long time to really begin to listen deeply to. So I ignored for a long time, and then I ignored until I basically, ran into a wall where I just couldn't take another step without honoring this voice in my head that was telling me I needed to live a different way.
So how did you explain that, to your spouse? I mean, how was that something that was like, okay, I need to start looking at things differently?
Well, it started out just as me just kind of being uncomfortable and not happy and just kind of grumpy and whiny and complaining about, stuff that I wasn't liking and wasn't feeling right. But I also didn't know what was wrong. I honestly didn't. And I was a new mom. So I was juggling a full-time job and new motherhood. So, at first he was just like, okay, maybe this is just a rough patch. And maybe she just needs a vacation. Or maybe, she just needs to stop working. So we kind of stopped there. We started there by having me just take a step away from work for a while, stay home with the kids, reconnect with motherhood. And then I started really thinking about things. And it was then that, I knew that I had to see the world. I knew there was stuff to learn out there. I knew that our normal suburban life, wasn't, that the answers weren't there for me. So, I started to introduce these ideas, the what ifs. Would you consider an extended, stay somewhere in another place around the world? And then I would stretch it to, would you consider going around the world? And then would you consider selling the house? And, one thing led to another. And he was very, very threatened by the whole idea. I mean, he just didn't understand it, and he didn't understand why it didn't work for me. And honestly, I didn't really have a big strategy or plan laid out for us. So, and I didn't know what I was searching for. So it was a really, really tough sell initially. And then I think it was just a breaking point as a couple. And he knew if he didn't give into it, that we might not make it. So it was really, the whole story unfolds from the starting point of a love affair, because I honestly don't think if he hadn't have said, let's do it, that we would have made it. He did it, and he did it for me. And I'm still thanking him for that.
What a great guy. I mean, because that would be really tough, I think, for a lot of couples to get to that point where you have a family and you're like, okay, well, let's travel the world and give this all up. That's a certain type of calling. Not everyone has that type of calling.
No, it was, it was a very unsettling time, and it was a leap of faith that I could have taken myself. But when we took it together, I think it was that much more powerful, because there were both of us, holding hands, saying there is more meaning for us out there in experiencing life than in building this silo of security around money and whatever society is telling us that we need to be working towards. We need to figure out together what else there is for us individually, and that, that first step away. We took a trip for 6 weeks to Costa Rica, where my husband worked while we were away. And that was our first kind of jaunt. But then we took a bigger step to move to the south of France, to a rural village. And it, excuse me, it was there that we actually just spent 6 years, renovating and doing what we could to earn money. But really, in essence, we weren't building much of a future financially for ourselves, but we were giving ourselves the time to figure out who we were. And that didn't happen in a year. It actually took, 6 or 7 years to figure out. So when I look back, none of this stuff happened overnight. It was big chunks of time where we allowed ourselves to really get to know ourselves and each other.
Were there times for you that you felt scared about the changes that were happening?
Oh, totally. I have a lot of memories of just not knowing what the future was going to bring, and wondering if we had risked, all of this stability, what we had risked it for. I mean, many, many moments where I was wondering if we were just crazy for doing what we were doing, either on the road traveling with the kids, or just at a point in life where there were moments where I wanted that house back on Lancaster Drive in Orlando, Florida. I wanted that predictable life back. But actually, those moments would would pass, and the future unfolded in a way that allowed us to trust in something different, and to know that you're going to have hiccups along the way. I mean, nothing's ever going to be entirely smooth, and it just led us to a different type of life that wasn't predictable. And yeah, now we've learned to live with that. And I don't know if anybody really, as much as we think we can predict, we really can't. None of us can. So if we're telling ourselves that we know what's going to happen tomorrow, then I think we're under some sense of illusion, because none of us know what's going to happen.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, I've had many friends who, passed really young. I mean, we just don't really know if we're even guaranteed tomorrow. So I think living your life where you feel like you're authentic is the only way that you can go forward and really find that inner peace.
No, that's I couldn't agree more. And actually that took a long time. Like I was saying, our first big chunk in this journey was, 6 or 7 years in the south of France, where my husband learned that he loved old homes and transforming old homes. And I reconnected with this love of exploring the world. And so that was what we did. And we didn't, we weren't building anything secure for ourselves, but we were understanding what that passion was about. And ultimately later we both build futures on those two things. For me, it was building a foundation and a philanthropic travel company, and giving back to the world. And for my husband, it was building a business around old homes, and he runs a villa rental business here now in Provence. So had we not stepped away from that predictable life of structure that was, sure, we were ticking the boxes and reaching, quote, goals, but they weren't genuine to who we were as people. And that's scary. It's scary to turn your back on what seems to be working and work towards something that's unknown. It really is. It was this very scary move.
Why don't you share with our listeners, one, I mean, I know this would be kind of tough to pick out, but like one point in your travels that really stuck out for you.
Well, I actually start the book with a chapter in India. So I went finally, so I've always had this love of for humanitarian work, even as a small child. And I ignored this desire to get involved in any of it because it didn't, how could you earn a living? How could you, it just wasn't encouraged. I didn't encourage myself. I don't think my family really encouraged it. I don't think our society really encouraged, heading into that type of work. Maybe a stint in the Peace Corps, but who's at that moment in time, it wasn't the thing to do. Anyway, so I finally, after many years of traveling around, decided, you know what, I'm gonna take this big step, and I'm going to start my journey to giving back to the world. So I took a volunteer vacation in India, in Chennai, at an orphanage for a couple of weeks. And it was super shocking. It was nothing like I was expecting. I thought that I would feel good, as though I was making a difference. And, it was anything but that. It was really, when I look back, some of these vacations, the way that they're packaged and how we go into them kind of blind and semi-ignorant, actually very ignorant. I looked around the room and I was supposed to be teaching English, and I just felt really useless. There was no plan for what I was going to teach. And I just felt I didn't speak their language. I just thought, what am I doing here? And how could I really make a difference in the lives of these children? And I came home from that trip, and that was really the spark for what would later become Go Philanthropic Travel, and later a foundation that works with communities around the world who, lacking basic needs in education. But it was a journey that went wrong that, sparked an interest in trying to create something that was better.
Well, let's talk about your foundation for a little bit here. So what does your foundation do?
So we Well, let's start with, some values, because we're very, very driven by our values. And one is that we don't have the solutions for other people. None of us do, one individual to the next. So to assume that, we could understand how to fix a problem in Cambodia or in Nepal or in India, that assumption is pretty crazy. So, and in the sort of give back world, you can go into it thinking that because we have privilege in our lives, that means that we have the answers for other people. And so our foundation is built around the principle that people have answers to their own problems, and that they need partnership in creating better futures. So we work with very small, not grassroots, community-based programs around the world. We're working in 8 different countries, and they're working in the areas of health, education, or human rights. Normally very small programs that are really, underserved. They're not well known. They don't have big websites. They're not recognized in the international community. But when we identify them, we know that they're devoted to their causes, and we help them with everything from fundraising to understanding what other local resources they might be able to tap into. So it's a partnership. And it's really been a very, very beautiful work to get into, because you go in thinking that, you have something to offer, when really, yes, we do, but we have a lot to learn. And so it's been this kind of back and forth of sharing what we have and then learning, and vice versa.
How do you think the travels that you've taken have impacted your children?
That's a great question. It's given them, number one, I think, they don't fear the world, and they don't fear difference, and they don't see lack the way that maybe most people might if you haven't traveled. So if you haven't done a lot of global traveling, you could go somewhere, and because the surface may seem different, and it may seem not new and not developed, quote, developed. But really, when you do have the opportunity to travel, you have a very different perspective in that respect. And, that word developed actually transforms, because some of these places that may seem like they have less actually have so much more wisdom, or they're rooted in wisdom. And so I think the kids they realized early on that they just didn't judge. They didn't judge the book by its cover. And that was really, really interesting to me, because as a parent, as we were traveling with them, of course, we'd be like, ooh, I don't know, this looks kind of sketchy. When really it was just different. And the further we traveled and got off the beaten path, the more we saw things in a different way, and they often saw it in that different way first, and because they didn't have this, they didn't have this judgment. They had a cleaner perspective. So yeah, less fear, and much more acceptance to difference.
Sounds like such a great adventure. I mean, and what a great gift to give your children, being able to be in the world, and really immerse themselves in a way that most people never really get to do their entire lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's, again, a very, very big privilege, and a very big classroom. I've always seen the world as a classroom. So I know for us as a family, we've just learned a tremendous amount from getting away from what we know.
Well, on that, topic of it being a classroom, what do you think are some of the lessons that you learned personally about yourself during this trip?
Well, it's been a long, long trip to many different places, and it's not over in the sense that I'm still amazed that, sort of every situation that we walk into, whether it's a situation in our daily lives or, in a new country, is that we bring to that experience our own past experience, our own perspective, our own view of the world, and that can, that can really shape what we're seeing. And so I guess the lesson that I've learned is to be really, really open and to understand that we're only seeing things through our small perspective, and that there's a million ways to live life. There are a million ways to see a situation. We can see a situation as, the cup half full, or it can be half empty. That the more I continue to travel and to work in the development world and to just explore, the more I'm open to seeing things in a different way. So I think that would be my lesson, is that it's been an awakening in terms of what we think we know based on our perspective and what we're seeing from our eyes.
That's so beautiful. I mean, it's interesting because I know when I've traveled, and it sounds like you're on a greater journey, and as you say, it's still continuing. I mean, you do get this interesting level of perspective that you wouldn't otherwise have if you hadn't gone and tried something different and been in another culture and see how other people live. It really gives you it's kind of the bird's eye view on how life is for other people, and and how grateful we should be in many ways.
For sure. I think it's a combination of it. It does shed light on all that we have in terms of opportunity, the basics. And when you really get out there, you realize how much of that the world doesn't have, how many people do not have access to their basic human rights. It's pretty shocking. I mean, I was, pretty paralyzed for the first few years of seeing all that actually happens in the world. But there's a flip side to it. There's also an understanding of the great potential of human life. And, we at the foundation, we're working with organizations and people who, do so much more with less. And it gives you incredible hope and incredible inspiration around the strength of the human spirit and what's in us. And it makes you wonder whether we're not working to our greatest potential. And it motivates you, to want to understand more about what there is to do, both inside ourselves and to help others be able to tap that as well. So yeah, it's just inspiring. So many people ask me, "Oh, isn't it sad? Are you, because you're working in areas that, are struggling. Isn't it sad?" And it just isn't. It's just been incredibly uplifting and encouraging to see, what we can do and what people do when they're confronted with great adversity. They do amazing things for the greater good. So yeah, I'm amazed. I'm amazed at the beauty of humanity.
Well, there's so much creativity that actually happens during those points in a person's life when they're maybe not given all the resources that we can so easily maybe have here. I mean, creativity to solve different problems, I think, really skyrockets.
Oh, you're so right. I mean, the level of innovation out there is off the charts. Why? Because they have to be, because the answer isn't on a shelf that they can just, pull off and carry on. They have to create. You're so right. And really, when you look at philanthropy and the quote giving world, it's much more powerful and effective for us to come in and help ignite that innovation and help that innovation spread than it is to come in and say, here, here's our idea. Of course we can contribute an idea, but that's very different than coming in and saying, we want to hear that idea, and how can we help that idea spread? It's powerful. It's a subtle difference, but an important difference in how we approach philanthropy.
What do you think has been one of the more magical points of your traveling?
Oh gosh, that's such a tough question because it's so broad. But it's all magical. Difference is magical. We tend to feel very, very comfortable in situations that are the same. And, to go back to the quote, predictability of life and where this journey started for me and why I hit that wall. It's that, there is so much to learn from difference and being sort of, outside of our comfort zones. It's in that zone, that uncomfortable zone, that we actually do our learning. And we're doing that learning because we're experiencing different things and we're seeing value in that beautiful difference. So I know it sounds kind of esoteric, but it's just not. I mean, it's, I've really, really learned to feel comfort in the uncomfortable.
Well, I think that's real important, because a lot of times people get to this place of uncomfort and they're trying to move beyond that instead of going, you know what, maybe this is okay for right now. It's needed right now. And with all journeys, if it's all simple and easy and 5 stars, there's nothing to really be gained by that. But when you really want to have something that's more soul feeding, you can look at just what's going on around you, look at the deeper picture. And I think there's a lot there that can be learned.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think instead of actually moving through discomfort, I feel like people want to numb the discomfort or shut it down. And we do that in a million ways. And of course I have too. I mean, you do it, and our devices are a way for us to not have to think through something or to feel something. I mean, our, just our addiction to, popping some sort of pill to make everything feel better, be it aspirin or Xanax or whatever. But, we just don't want to feel uncomfortable at all. Yet, and what I write about in Jumping the Picket Fence is that so much happens in that moment, these moments of discomfort, that, all of the great stuff that I experienced, it just happened mostly in those difficult moments. So it's only when you look back that you can piece that all together, especially, in that exact moment in time, you're wishing it wasn't that way. But when you look back, you say, oh man, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have figured that out. So.
Yeah. I mean, we can really kind of test the mettle of our character when these things happen. Otherwise, it's like, how do we know who we really are?
No, that's it. That's the ultimate big point, is that maybe this life thing is about figuring out really who we are and how much potential is in there. And when you think about it that way, then you see the trials and the tests and all of that as exercise, to see how strong you can be. And that's when it becomes a beautiful challenge. It's okay. I want to see what I have in me. And when you start to feel that strength build, you recognize it in others too. And it's, you want to help others achieve their best as well. So yeah, maybe that's what it's all about.
I think we're still all learning what it's all about as we continue to go.
Definitely.
Well, Lydia, I'd love for you to share a little bit about the travel portion of your business and what that looks like.
Sure. So we have a foundation, which is a nonprofit, and a philanthropic travel company, which is a social enterprise. And Go Philanthropic Travel runs small group journeys to the various places that the foundation has partnerships. So 6 or 7 countries at this point, 1 trip per region per year. So we're running, about 5 trips a year. And basically, it allows people the opportunity to sit and learn from these small grassroots community programs dealing with very difficult issues like human trafficking, child labor, gender issues, early marriage. So you can go to India, for example, on one of our journeys and see the Taj Mahal and learn about the culture and do all of the things that, you'd want to do in visiting this incredible country. But at the same time, you're also learning about very, very important efforts that are that are happening, and why they're there, what are the context of these issues, and what are the solutions being used to prevent them. So they're very, very enlightening trips. It gives us an opportunity to really understand what's happening out there in the world, and also to know how we individually can help make a difference. So it's a learning platform, a travel learning platform.
What an experience that must be. That sounds so interesting. I'm going to be checking into that personally. Oh yeah, my goodness. I mean, it's like, because I think a lot of times when people take trips to India or to different places, they don't want to just go there. And yeah, of course you want to go there and see some of the different sites, but at the same time, you really want to immerse yourself in the culture and with the people and understand what's going on with them.
You want to learn about it. And I think that's why a lot of people go to a country like India, come home and feel like they haven't, that there's much to do there, and they want to go back and make a difference. And so you end up on a volunteer trip like I did, where you really, really can get yourself into a situation where you're not really doing any good, and you can actually do harm in entering into situations that you're out of your depth per se. So it's a way to travel, to learn, and also to be a part of great efforts. And you come home just knowing so much more about what's happening out there. And really, when you understand the context, you're much more willing to be a long-term partner. So pretty powerful experiences. So all of that can be, you can find us at gophilanthropictravel.com. Anybody interested in taking a first step, and there's absolutely no requirement to give anything or write a check. It's just come, see, and learn, and go from there.
Where could our listeners connect with you and learn more about your book?
Well, lydia-dean.com is a good source for both the book, which is sold on Amazon, Kindle, and book format. So you can find out about Picket Fence on lydia-dean.com. And also I have links to the foundation and to Go Philanthropic Travel from there as well.
Well, Lydia, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, Marianne, thanks so much. It was great chatting with you.
Well, thank you, Lydia. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about not only your nonprofit, but your book, Jumping the Picket Fence. Jumping the Picket Fence is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and indie retailers. Well, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
If not me, then who? This ethos is driving the Travis Manion Foundation to empower veterans and families of fallen heroes to develop character in future generations. In 2007, Marine First Lieutenant Travis Manion was killed in Iraq while saving his wounded teammates. Travis's legacy lives on in the 5 words he spoke before leaving for his final deployment. If not me, then who? Guided by this mantra, veterans continue their service, developing strong relationships in the community, and thrive in their post-military lives. Visit TravisManion.org and ensure the character of our nation's heroes lives on in the next generation. If not me, then who?
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Alexis-Marie-Chute, and she's here to share with us her new book, Expecting Sunshine, A Journey of Grief, Healing, and Pregnancy After Loss. Now, Alexis-Marie is an award-winning author, artist, filmmaker, curator, and inspirational speaker. Her memoir was listed as Kirkus Best Book of 2017 and has received many literary awards. Expecting Sunshine is also a highly acclaimed feature documentary film produced and directed by the author that was screened around the world in 2018 and 2019. So let's welcome to the show, Alexis-Marie-Chute.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here. I've been looking forward to this discussion for some time. I mean, your book touches on such a heart-wrenching story. I mean, it's a great story in many ways as well, but it's just so heart-wrenching. You know, when did you decide it was time to start writing this book?
Well, I don't know if I sat down and decided to write a book. It was more that I was leaving this difficult time of my life, and I came to this point where I'm like, I need an outlet. And I've always been an artist and a writer, but I found that after my loss, I sort of pulled back. I pulled away from those creative outlets because I felt like I was too vulnerable. I was scared of what would come out of me. And it was only when I got back into writing and making art and just letting creativity flow that I really discovered that, wow, I think I have a story to tell here. Not only a personal story, but a story that so many families walk through. And yeah, it kind of evolved from there. It was a very organic start.
Well, and for our listeners that are new to your story, why don't you share with us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, so like most young couples, my husband and I decided, you know, let's do this parenting thing. We were so excited, and we had one little daughter named Hannah, and once we got the whole nursing thing figured out, we were like, oh, let's have another baby. I was so excited, and I think also so naive. I didn't, we live in this modern age where we think, you know, doctors and medicine, that we're safe, right? We can, if we're ill, we get taken care of. And so I had never really even experienced other people sharing with me about the potential of loss during pregnancy. And that's what happened to us. We found out about halfway through the pregnancy that our second child, who we later named Zachary, that he had a random genetic abnormality that let tumors grow in his body. And so this news knocked us off our feet. We were shocked, just completely thrown out of our worldview. And in the 6 weeks that followed that diagnosis, we did everything we could, saw specialist doctors and tried to, you know, different medication, just everything. And in the end, there was nothing we could do. Doctors predicted that Zachary would be stillborn. And yet our one saving grace in this story is that he was born alive. He didn't cry. He didn't open his eyes, but he moved a little bit in my arms. And he passed away as I held him, chest to chest, skin to skin. And that day, I ceased to be one person. I completely lost myself, actually. And it was a huge journey of years to rediscover who I am and make peace with that experience, because I was just utterly devastated and heartbroken. And my husband too, although he did show it in different ways.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, that's so difficult. It's something that no parent should go through. And yet it's a topic, and you brought this up a little bit, that's a taboo topic. I mean, I think it's because people, they don't know what to say. They don't know how to respond or how to act when they have friends or families that are going through this.
Well, our culture doesn't know how to deal with not only the loss of a child, but grief in general. We support people around the initial time of loss. You know, we attend the funerals. We wear the black clothing as a symbol of mourning alongside them. But I don't think we're equipped with the vocabulary to talk about loss, and especially the loss of a child. If a grandma passes away, for example, we can reflect on the long life that they had and the experiences and the family they grew and the different aspects of their life. But what do you say when it's a baby and they didn't have a chance to have any of those experiences?
Yeah, I mean, there's just no words for that. And you're right, society does have this idea when it comes to grief. It's like, okay, you've taken your week vacation to grieve, now it's time to get back. And it's really,
exactly.
And you talk about this in your book. I mean, everyone grieves differently.
Totally. Well, and that's something that I did not appreciate at the time, because my husband and I, his name is Aaron, the way that he grieved was so different. And to me, from the outside looking at him, it looked like he wasn't grieving. And as a bereaved mom who was just like, I just felt all the emotions all at once, and it was like spilling out of me. I think I didn't know how to process him, and he didn't know how to process me. We were both coexisting for many, even years after our loss, just trying to figure each other out and learn how to support each other, and often feeling like we were speaking different languages.
Have you had a lot of people reach out to you for writing this book? Because there really isn't, I mean, while there are books out there on parenting, there really isn't a book that's out there that helps people kind of overcome and work through such a tragic loss.
Yeah, I think that's the most rewarding part of this entire process, is when I hear from readers their responses. I actually published on my website a really amazing letter from a reader. She sent me this email, and she had said she had had a miscarriage, and she walked into her bookstore in her city and didn't even know what section of the bookstore to look in. She went to the grief section. She went to the parenting section, and she couldn't figure out even where to find a book on this kind of topic. And she was too upset to ask for help from the people who work there. And so she went on to her phone and searched for books about miscarriage and healing. And my book came up, and she read it, and she said it made such a huge difference for her. So right there, I just feel like, because that's what I needed and I didn't have after my loss, was like something to cling to, of someone else who had been through that experience and really got how I'm feeling. And in my book, like, it's the most candid, vulnerable account of my experience. Like, I don't sugarcoat it, and I don't present myself in the best way at all times. But I think that really helps people give themselves permission to express their loss, their grief, their sorrow, and even the recovery process in their own unique way. Because, like, self-help books are awesome, but there's no one right way. And we need to really be authentic for what we are feeling in that time. And there's no logical grief cycles, right? So yeah, I'm immensely grateful when I hear people's feedback. It just warms my heart.
Did you feel that when you were going through this process and you really dealing with this pain, that you were really alone?
I did, because at that point in my life, no one had, people don't advertise that they've had this kind of loss, right? And so I left the hospital holding a teddy bear that the hospital gave me when I should have been holding my baby. And I just felt like everyone was looking at me and everyone knew. And I felt like it was such a personal failure. I felt, and this is, not totally right. This is my own brain thinking this, but I thought that I'm the mom. I should be able to protect my baby. And this is, this beautiful maternal growing pregnancy stage. And because things didn't go as planned and I didn't have answers to this random genetic abnormality, the only person I could blame was myself. And that was hard to get over. I felt a lot of shame, a lot of loneliness. I was scared of what people would say. And it was a very challenging experience. And it was only when I started opening up to other people and really sharing my journey that it kind of gave them the open door that they started to share their journey. And I would meet people in the grocery store and they'd say, oh, how many kids do you have? And I would make the uncomfortable statement, well, I have my living daughter, but I also have a son that I lost. And it was amazing how many people would say, oh my gosh, I lost a baby too. Or, oh, I know somebody who's lost a child. And so I feel that the storytelling, the sharing aspect, it's really powerful because then we realize we're not alone. So it takes a little bit of courage to be open, but it's worth it in the end.
Is that what helped you heal from your pain?
Oh gosh, I did so many things. I think there was not one thing that helps overall, but a series of many conscious choices. So I consciously chose to step back from work. I call the year after my loss my year of distraction because I did everything but grieve. I worked like crazy. I took my living daughter, Hannah, to every kid's activity. I filled up every particle of the day so I didn't have to think about what I was going through. I could just push everything down and be present with all the activities and work. So for me, it was really an intentional slowing down. So I had the time and the space and the grace from other people. It wasn't like I had the pressures of external things to deal with. I could really just think about and process my loss. And so even in that time, I tried different things like meditation and mindfulness. I read books on psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy, like changing the way we think, because I wanted to have more kids. And yet I couldn't fathom having a baby that lived. Even though I had Hannah, my experience with Zachary sort of traumatized me into feeling like this is going to happen again. This is going to happen again. And it was just this terror that I had thudding in my heart. I made other intentional choices too. So I got back into painting and I started to make wood sculpture, which is something I hadn't done before. I attended some grief therapy groups and got to know other people and just really took time to sleep and drink tea and have self-care. I think as busy human beings, not to mention a busy mom of one, we don't always slow down to take that time. So it was a very intentional decision to grieve actively, but I do think that made all the difference. I know some people who they've really just sort of pushed it down, and many, many years later, they're still dealing with it in a really raw and painful way. And so I'm thankful that I was intentional and took time to process the hard stuff, because now it's almost 9 years later. I'm at a very joyful, reflective place. I'm really thankful for Expecting Sunshine, the book. We've also produced a documentary film. But I'm really thankful for these because it's almost like a legacy, projects that I created that for me helped me remember my son and celebrate him in a positive way in my life and my family and my living kids. Now I have 3 living children. So I've had 2 boys since losing Zachary. So we can all kind of be a part of this. For Zachary's birthday, we always bake a cake, and my husband will take the day off work, and we will do something special as a family. So really, my loss broke me as a person, as a woman, as a mother, but it also helps me discover who I am and what is really important to me. And I would go back and I would change my loss any day to bring Zachary back. But I do feel this immense gratitude and soulfulness about where I am now. And that's because I intentionally grieved and took that time.
Yeah, there's so many people when they have a loss that happens, and and we look at, especially at a loss of a child, just how traumatic that is, and they don't really know how to deal with it or how to process it. And so I felt like your book really gave people, in some ways, kind of a roadmap that it's okay if it takes a while for you to get to a place where you're ready to deal with it, but eventually you do want to go through that and deal with it.
Absolutely.
So how did this affect your family overall?
Well, my husband and I had a few very challenging years, and we eventually got couples counseling. I think one of the best things, though, that helped us, so I think I was a bit of I express my emotions on the outside, where my husband definitely bottles things up. And I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way, but it was really when we sat down and had an intentional conversation. And this actually happened in a little road trip we were taking from our city to another city about 3 hours away. And I was doing my master's at that time, and I had written Expecting Sunshine, and I was editing it during my master's program, and one of my professors gave me the assignment, I want you to rewrite this one chapter from your husband's perspective. And it was a very difficult chapter. It was a situation where he was going back to work and I was grieving, and I just begged him to be with me. And my grief was irrational. I wanted to do self-harm because I just didn't even know how to get my feelings out. And so it was an immensely personal chapter, obviously written from my perspective. And when this professor said, oh, well, my assignment to you is to rewrite that from your husband's perspective, my first thought was like, no way. I don't want to see it from his perspective. I'm mad at him. I'm mad at him for leaving me and going back to work and not supporting me. So I had a lot of bitterness towards my husband for years after. And so we were in that car on this drive. It was just the two of us. And so I think I was so grumpy. I was like, okay, here's this chapter. I read it to him. Tell me what it was like from your perspective. I was very cold about it. And we ended up talking that entire 3-hour drive. He shared with me what that was like through his eyes. Some of it was hard for me to hear because, like I said before, I'm not perfect. And I definitely don't present myself in that way, but to hear how I could have supported him better, it just really opened my eyes to the deep undercurrent of male grief. On the surface, they might look okay. Men, husbands, partners, and some women too. This is how they express themselves. But there's a deep grief that happens under the surface that we can't see and appreciate if it's not expressed. And often men in our culture, they're told to buck up, man up, don't cry, be strong for your family, go to work and provide. And they don't receive the support, nearly enough support that they desperately need, but don't necessarily know how to express. And so for me, that car ride with my husband and then rewriting that chapter from his perspective, it just opened my eyes and helped me to have more compassion and empathy for him. And I really feel like that experience that we had together in that car and rewriting that chapter helped save our marriage. It helped us know how to communicate and understand each other better. And in terms of my kids after the loss, so Hannah was the only one who, and she's so funny, she's 9 now, she'll be turning 10 soon. she is so proud. She's like, I'm the only sibling that got to meet Zachary. Like, she kind of rubs it in her living brother's faces. She's so funny. But it's special. Like, she has pictures with Zachary and stuff. So I think that she feels she has this really special connection. And my husband, Aaron, and I, we've been very intentional with being open with our kids about what happened. Because I think that, like I said before, our culture doesn't know how to process grief, death. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. And so I'm an open book, like literally and figuratively with my memoir. But I just wanted my kids to know me. And I think through this experience, they have grown to be very thoughtful little people. And a few years ago, one of my closest friends had a miscarriage at 19 weeks. And because I've been open with her, she texted me a picture of her baby. She was holding her baby. And at 19 weeks, there wasn't much, like weight to the child, but her little daughter was stretched from the top of her middle finger to the heel of her hand. And so I have this picture of my friend holding her daughter. And my daughter, Hannah, was sitting beside me when I got that text message. And she's like, oh, can I see? And I was kind of like, oh, should I show her? Should I not show her? I ended up deciding I want to be open with these sort of things. So I showed Hannah that picture. And her first reaction wasn't, oh, gross, that baby looks so weird, or oh, like I'm uncomfortable kind of thing. Her first response was, oh, now they're just like us. And it was just that acceptance that like death happens to people, and yet it's not something ugly or taboo or something we should keep a secret, like not talk about or whatever. So I really feel like as a family, we've grown so much, and I think that's a gift that Zachary has given us.
What a valuable lesson to have at such a young age. There are many people that go their entire lifetime and never get that.
Yeah, well, I wish I could have learned these lessons a different way, but I am very grateful now, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what a difficult thing to have gone through. And, in your book, you talk about, the support, and you mentioned it a little bit ago. Was there a specific type of support that was a little bit more helpful to you from friends and family than maybe some others?
Well, I would have to say the biggest support that friends and family offered right after our loss was food. It sounds so simple that it's almost like we could almost forget this kind of aspect. But, in the time leading up to our loss, my husband, Aaron, and I were at the hospital every day doing testing and everything. And we would get home late at night. And, if usually it was pizza, right? It's like whatever we can order quickly and easily because we just didn't even have the strength. And after our loss as well, just, we had amazing family and friends step up and deliver food to our house. This is before Skip the Dishes. But we had food delivered to our house by friends, like homemade things, or even, a grocery store lasagna and a thing of bread and a package of salad. But stuff like that, it was such a practical need that was met with that, because we just had no energy. Like, grief and the stress and the shock of everything just stripped away our reserves. And so I'm immensely grateful for that early support. And even now, almost 9 years later, I am so thankful for the friends that still ask me like how I'm doing in terms of this experience. And, on Zachary's birthday, I still get texts from certain family members and friends saying, hey, thinking about you and your family today. So I think that grief is something that never fully leaves us. We'll always feel the pang of it years after, because the love is still there, right? We'll always love those people even when they're not with us. At the same time, the rawness isn't there, but it's those people that continue to acknowledge these important people that we lost. it means so much. And it doesn't have to be a lot. I think sometimes we don't say anything because we don't know what to say. But even just admitting that and just say, hey, thinking about you or remembering Zachary today. I have some friends that send me articles every once in a while. If it's some kind of loss article that makes them think about Zachary or think about what I'm going through. So it's just that the people that keep asking, even years later, the grief doesn't go away. I don't express it every day, but it's those friends and family that are still supportive years later that make such a huge difference in my life.
Yeah, it's so important to have people there who maybe they don't know what to say, but just saying, hey, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm here if you need anything is a good start.
Mm-hmm. And one other aspect that is helpful for families and friends to think about if they're supporting a person who's lost someone, I think that creating little memories. So perhaps it's a little scrapbook. Like I've made scrapbooks of, I don't have many photos of Zachary, but I scrapbooked like his birth, the time at the hospital. And, we have a little lock of his hair and some hand and footprints. So creating memories, little mementos, things that have meaning. So even my family and I, we went to Disneyland this past spring break, and the kids wanted little Mickey Mouse hats, with the ears. And we got one for Zachary too. And we put it in his memory box. There's not too much in there because he didn't have any experiences, but we're trying to create memories. So we're putting the things that we get for him in that box. So just little things like that, I think, are little meaningful ways that if you join with a bereaved parent or anyone who's grieving the loss of somebody they love, just help them create little memories. We planted trees in our backyard. That was something special we did. So just little things. I think little things go a long way.
It's so important to have those and, to feel like you're bringing the family together and remembering. So, because it's so interesting how people process grief. People are going through their emotions in different ways. So to have that really kind of honors everybody.
Exactly. Good point. That's totally right. Right on.
Yeah. Well, in your book, you also talk about a rainbow baby. So what is that?
Mm-hmm. So I hadn't learned that term until I had experienced loss. So rainbow baby is just a little bit of a term that references the storm of sorrow that you go through after the loss of a child. And a rainbow baby is kind of like the ray of sunshine at the end of that experience. And it's not saying that one child replaces another child, but it's just that the new life that can come after loss is beautiful. It's healing. It's just a little bit of hope. And so I consider both my sons that I've had after my loss my rainbow babies. And yeah, it's just, I feel like it's a beautiful, hopeful term instead of saying like my subsequent pregnancy after loss or something. It's just a beautiful term. And the symbolism and the metaphor of it are very inspiring.
Yeah, that is very beautiful. What are some of the things you want readers to take away from your book?
Well, I want people to know that they are not alone, that this happens to many people, unfortunately. I want people to know that they have permission. They don't need permission from anyone else, but they have the ability to give themselves permission to feel what they feel in those moments, to express it in a way that feels authentic and real. I want people to walk away to knowing that they're not crazy, that they're not to blame. I want to leave people with a seed of hope that there is the possibility for joy after this experience. I remember early in my days after my loss, I felt like I could never be happy again, and that every smile or shred of happiness was a betrayal of my grief for Zachary. Like, how can I be happy when he's not here with me? And yet I come to this point in my journey that I write about. It's just accepting. I've come to accept and make peace with the fact that we can't always have answers to our why questions, and that there is a beautiful mystery to life that it's better to embrace and surrender to rather than fight against. And I just want to encourage people that the joy is real, and that those children that have passed away, they change us. Our love for them can never die, and that they will always be with us. Like, I really feel that even though Zachary is not with me in body, that he's with me in spirit, and my family and I celebrate him in real, tangible ways. So there's so much to be thankful for, even in the midst of heartache, and even in the times where you don't want to hear, be thankful, that there is hope at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, that's really what I want people to get from the book.
Well, there's so much, of course, that we haven't covered from your book, Expecting Sunshine. And my goodness, it's so very well written and such a great read. And if anyone knows somebody that's going through loss of a child, miscarriage, this is the perfect book for them. Alexis, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work? And because I know you've written some other books as well.
Yeah, so people can find out all about the different things I do on my website, which is my name, alexis-marie-chute.com. And my last name is spelled C-H-U-T-E. And on there I have all the info about my books, Expecting Sunshine documentary film, and also art and photography that I've made, some of it in response to my loss. So yeah, and then my books are available wherever books are sold. You can probably order them on Amazon and online, go to your indie bookstore. And yeah, even if people would love to email me, that would be great too. My email is info@, and then my name again, alexis-marie-chute.com. And connect with me on social media too. I would love to hear from readers. That would be awesome.
Well, I'm connected with you on social media. I highly suggest everyone do the same. Alexis, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Alexis. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about your new book, Expecting Sunshine. Expecting Sunshine's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.